records everything in separate streams, so
Oh,
you can
great.
do whatever you want to with the video editing or the audio editing.
I think I may have used this before, or someone used it doing a thing with me, because I
Mm.
remember that feature of recording the audio differently. So, anyway, let's get this going then. If you're listening to this, welcome, all three of you for now, to the inaugural, actually, Salmon Theory Talks. It's a series of video interviews and conversations that I'm going to be having with folks that I admire, folks who either follow the newsletter or who generally I want them to share their wisdom with me, because the topic that we're always going to go back to is micro wisdom by modern marketers. Micro because we want it to be digestible and practical and things you can remember, not things you need to spend tons and tons of time reading, but also by modern marketers because I think sometimes it's easy to glorify the past, and I'd much rather have people who glorify the present. So, my guest today is Chris, who is the founder of 42 Courses. We have been contacts on and off on the internet for quite some time, but it's the first time we're meeting. And yeah, Chris, thanks for making time for this. Shall we get into the first question then?
Let's do it. So, Rob, thank you so much, and no pressure, inaugural guest. I mean, God.
Yeah, and don't worry, the pressure is not on you because I might as well say it. I completely fucked up the recording software, so we're actually using Chris's Riverside account for the first episode because we like to build in public, and so admitting these things is also building in public. So, Chris, how do you describe your job to someone outside of your industry?
Very badly, I think. Normally, the description normally sends people down the wrong path. But normally, to people outside of this industry, they go, "What do you do?" And I go, "I sort of work in advertising." They go, "Oh, what do you do?" And I say, "Well, I run an e-learning company." And they go, "Oh, so what sort of stuff do you teach?" And I go, "Lots of advertising topics and creativity." And then for some odd reason, about half the time they go, "Oh, so what sort of age kids are you teaching?" So, it's, but I don't know. Part of me inside thinks that's funny. Like, we're a curious bunch, so most kids are a curious bunch as well. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a backhanded compliment.
I mean, you could answer that by saying, well, they're usually in between their 30s and 40s. And it's still the right answer, right? Because a bunch of us are just kids inside, right?
True, 30s and 40s. I mean, that's almost retirement age in advertising, isn't it?
I
So
know, yeah. I don't know what happens after 40. You just disappear, I suppose.
I'm going to find out. I'm sort of early
Yeah.
40s now.
There's like a bank. There's maybe like a dirty corner behind each ad agency. That's where they leave the oldies, you know?
It is.
Do you want a
It
seasoned
is a serious.
professional? Just meet us at the back.
Yeah. It is a serious problem though. I think our industry
It
hasn't
is.
sort of quite figured out. I understand why it happens. It seems to be a sort of gradually over time you pay more people generally to people who are a bit older because they've got more experience and so they
Yeah.
do things a bit faster. But then you need to cut some weight, so you let them go. But it does seem a bit weird. I often thought it'd be fun to put out ads in Times and Telegraph and the FT and things and just look for sort of retired copywriters and art directors and just have an entire team made up of them. So I'd imagine you'd get much more work done
Oh yeah.
at a much higher quality level as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because so having started Salmon Labs about 7 months ago, one of the things I've been looking a lot into is like pricing and the business models for advisory and consulting. And if you think about it, an experienced person will be much faster at getting to something better because they've seen all of it, right? They go, I've seen this, I've worked on this, I know, I've forgotten more references than you've ever learned. I can fix this in a couple of days. But it is hard to charge that for clients when you're charging for time. And so
Yeah.
either you show up with a ridiculous rate, which clients don't buy, the business model is broken. My conclusion is the business model is broken.
Yeah.
But there is something interesting about the value of experience. It's also interesting that sometimes people describe the advertising industry as being like fashion. And part of me goes, I kind of get that. But fashion, notoriously, is not an old person's game. although maybe it
Mm.
should be, because fashion
Mm.
should be timeless, or
Mm.
rather, style is timeless. Fashion is more timely, at least from some of the definitions I've seen. But yeah, what's your take on the whole advertising is basically fashion?
I hadn't thought of that analogy before, but there's probably some truths in it, and that trends come and go and change, and they change very very quickly. I think with advertising though, it's not as perhaps as flitty, if that's a word.
Yeah,
I think it's sort of the tried and tested. I think that were developed many many years ago is often very much still true today.
it's very true.
The sort of, and maybe that's true in the fashion world. I've not spent enough time in it, to be honest, but yeah, I mean, I know that there's some similarities, and that yes, there's
Yeah.
lots of young people who work in fashion. They all tend to leave around 30s and 40s. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's maybe something to be learned from that. Maybe we should go and ask WGSN, and they'll let us know.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, it's funny that, like, I think I've seen Sir John Haggerty talk about it as fashion. That's where I get that reference from. I tend to agree with you that, the other value of experience is not only you get there faster, you know what stands the test of time, right? And so it is interesting. And being now in the ripe age of 35, I have been quite worried about what my 40s in this industry would look like for that reason. So I was like, am I just going to one day wake up and go, my skills are no longer fit for purpose? But increasingly, what I always go back to is like the fundamentals. And even, or especially in newer parts of the industry, like social, for example, the best professionals out there, they tie all the new stuff with the fundamentals. There's actually someone I know who has this great shtick where she says, I help you sort out the fundamentals and then you can have fun with them. Because basically she's going, understand the basics of brand building and then have fun on your socials, but not the other way around, because that's just pissing away money. Anyway, it's not really about
You'll,
the advertising industry, it's about
you
you. So
you'll always be fine, Rob, because you've got boundless curiosity, and you're bloody smart. So you've got
well,
nothing to fear.
say more, say more. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So let's move on to some other things. Chris, what should I know about your history to understand who you are today?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, there are probably a few kind of key things. I mean, obviously, my parents have influenced me a lot. I would expect as everything else. I grew up with a very kind of crazy, wacky, creative dad who was a famous fashion photographer back in the day. He used to took some of the earliest pictures of the Beatles, and I think he stole Mick Jagger's wife twice as well, or girlfriend or something. I mean, he was hilarious.
Now that's a
So I
claim to
had,
fame, man. I mean,
yeah, he
Mick
passed
Jagger
away a
steals
year.
other people's wives, right? Isn't that his shtick?
Well, he was married 4 times, I think, in the end. But he passed away last year. But he was just sort of someone who was always very positive, very very creative, always trying to invent new things, and age never kind of slowed him down in that way. Amazing storyteller. I mean, I still remember the stories that he used to sort of tell me when I was a kid. He used to make up these entire worlds and universes, and I'd just lie in bed and sit back and watch these sort of worlds unfold in front of me, which I think sort of helped me get a real love of reading and reading fiction. And that's definitely influenced me. It's given me the freedom to be very curious and to not be afraid of perhaps taking risks. And then my mum's side, she was sort of comes from Scotland originally, and came from a sort of a bad area of Glasgow, and made it herself. She worked insanely hard to get out of there, and this is back in the day when I think Glasgow now is a pretty lovely place, but back in the day I don't think it was so fantastic. She came down to London and became very successful, and was working in the hotel. And she was a bit more organised than Dad. I say a bit more, I mean insanely more organised. Mum ran the household and Dad was doing all the sort of wacky crazy things. So I think I had that nice balance of some order, but also some craziness, which was nice. And then I think the other sort of two big things that happened in my life earlier on were I lost one of my brothers when I was 17 turning 18. I was 16 turning 17. He was 17 turning 18 in a car accident. And obviously that was shit. But with all these kind of things, they give you jolts, and I think over time you learn how to take these things. And for me, I guess it made me less scared to perhaps take risks than I otherwise would have. So, rather than going to university, I ended up traveling around the world for a year or two. I was supposed to go to uni, and then I just thought, oh, I'm just going to start working because I'm massively dyslexic. Academic stuff's never really quite been for me, which is bizarre that I've ended up running an e-learning company. But I've always loved learning new things. I just don't like a traditional academic system, or the traditional academic system. And it sort of made my career go in weird ways. I mean, we don't need to get into it too much, but I started working off in a hi-fi store, then quit and ended up going to South Africa and getting a commercial pilot's license, and then started a website selling aeroplane parts and aeroplanes, and then ended up building a vineyard with a chap, and that vineyard became, I think, still sort of known as the first brand in the world to successfully grow through social media or sort of word of mouth marketing and digital marketing.
Wow.
So we started a blog. It was sort of before the days of Facebook and Twitter. And we went from selling 20,000 cases of wine a year to, I think it was about sort of 980,000 cases of wine a year in about 2 years.
Wow.
So it got picked up by Ad Age and all that kind of stuff. And that got me into the world of advertising. So I'd always read about it. I'd read David Ogilvy's books and loved it. And then with a friend of mine, I met the people in South Africa that run Ogilvy over there. Incredible people, still working in the industry today. It's a guy called Rob Hill, who is like Yoda. He's like an amazing strategist. If you ever get to meet him, I think he's in Belgium now running an Ogilvy office over there. Fascinating guy. But yeah, sort of met the right people, I guess, at the right time, and then got into advertising, and then gradually sort of got to where I am today. But I don't think I would have done any of those steps if those things in life hadn't have happened.
Yes.
I don't think I would have been brave enough.
Yeah.
And the way that I looked at it in the back of my brain and my mind was, what's the worst that could happen? And in my head, I wasn't afraid of failure, of what other people would think of me. I was afraid of the monetary failure and what would I do if I didn't, I couldn't afford to like rent somewhere. And in the back of my mind, my worst case scenario was, well, I'd probably end up back at my parents' house.
Yes.
And, and I like my mum and dad, so I thought it's probably not a bad thing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit embarrassing if it did happen, but touch wood.
I find that we often overestimate how much people think about us. I don't know if you feel this way, but like imagine tomorrow 42 Courses goes broke. Your biggest fear is people are going to think that Chris is a failure and didn't make it as an entrepreneur. Probably what's going to happen is people are either going to offer to help you because you've met loads of people along the way, or and I hate to say it, but it's kind of what we learn in advertising as well. They will just not remember that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a flicker in their lives. It's a small thing. They go, oh shit, okay, let me see if I can help Chris, and then they move on. They're not gonna go, let me think very deeply about how much of a failure Chris is. It's like, man, he tried it, it didn't work out. That's onwards and upwards. But that's not how we perceive what other people will think. They think that we're the most disgustingly incompetent human beings on the planet. But I just never seen that happen. It's just our minds like to pretend it happens.
Yeah, I mean we're all guilty of wanting to project a picture of ourselves that perhaps is something more than maybe what we are at our base. I mean, it probably explains why I think that I was reading about this the other day. Most people have a car that is way above their pay grade. Like, if you think about it, the number of people who are driving BMWs and Audis and fancy cars, and then you look at where they live or you look at what job they have, like it just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
And I
Drive
think
the car you want to be.
Yeah, well, outside of a house, statistically, it's the largest expense that we have as a car, and It's the biggest depreciating expense that we have. So it's in pretty much every dimension a terrible investment. But we all, if you have to have a car, I guess different if you're living in London, but if you have to have a car, generally you end up going for something that will make people think that we're doing way better than we are.
I mean,
it is quite irrational.
It is. I mean, I'm a very proud owner of a Hyundai i20, which I only bought because my partner was pregnant and we needed to go to hospital on occasion. So we're like, we got to get a car now. But that was 3 years ago. Our daughter's now 2.5. But 7 years without needing a car, and frankly, not missing one in London. It's just. But even then, we were like, right, what can we get for $6,000?
Yeah.
That was it.
Well, you used your smart brain there. You bought something in cash. You're not buying a lease or
Oh no,
anything
no.
else. So,
I
well done.
yeah, like frankly, with most things, I'm like, just tell me the lump sum, and I don't want to worry about it. Like that's how I pay for my insurance. It's like, just tell me the annual fee, I'll just pay it. I don't want to see things dripping out every month. I'll just pay it. I'll forget about it. Thankfully, I'm in a position where it's like, I get work, whatever. Like by the time I get certain amount of projects signed off and whatever, I've recouped all that money and then some. So it's like, it's fine. I just don't want to think about it. It's the same with like, we renewed our mortgage this year. And I was like, just give me a fixed. I don't want to have to worry about the rates. Just give me a fixed. Yeah, 4 point something. That's fine. Market's terrible. That's fine within terrible. Let's just move on.
No, you sometimes got to take it. Well, you got a very smart strategist brain on you, so congrats.
Well, it's
Better
me and
than
my
the rest of
partner
us.
riff a lot about these things because we're both overthinkers. So yeah, it's a dual effort, that's for sure. Chris, what is something you deeply believe but may never be able to prove?
It's a tricky question, and I don't even quite know how to describe it, but I think that, I mean, there's one thing. I was chatting to someone about this the other day. I think that there's another dimension in our lives that we can't understand. I don't think we have the tools to measure it, technology wise, and I don't think we as humans can quite understand it either, or you can't see it or feel it or touch it. I don't know whether it's time or whether it's something else. But there seems to be, without going down too much of a sci-fi route, and I'm not
We'll go there, man.
aliens or anything weird like that. But no, I think there are some things that are sort of seem to be scientifically unexplained, but yet still happen.
Yes.
There must be something else out there. I remember reading this story about a beetle in Australia that it was endangered. I think it still is endangered because it keeps on trying to have sex with beer bottles in the middle of the desert because they're shiny and they're green backs. The bottles have green or brown backs, and they look similar to the female species.
Yes.
And, the male species can't tell the difference between a female beetle and one of these bottles that's just sort of discarded. And so the population's been in decline. And it was because the beetle can't tell that bottle isn't a bottle. And I often wonder whether we as humans can't tell that some things are something, but we just do it anyway. It's like what we see and what we perceive around us, we do know isn't exactly the way that we see it. There are lots of molecules that are floating around, and that some of them are packed together more densely than others. And our eyes take in that information, and our brain translates it, and so we have a picture of the world that looks the way it looks. But there are probably other things that we can't see that impact our lives and the world around us. And some of it's really obvious. Like we know that there are lots of forms of light that we can't see. It'd be quite fun if we could see radio waves, but we can't. But we know that they're there. And I think that there are probably some other things that are around there that we haven't measured properly yet, and we can't see. And I think, to me, that I find that really exciting. It doesn't keep me up at night. It's just I think it means there's some unanswered questions always out there that can forever keep me curious. My wife always takes the piss out of me because I'm sort of one of those people who I'd be quite happy living forever in a way. Like I love learning new things. So it's just like if I could live forever and learn new things, I'd be really happy. I'm just like, what about everyone else? I'm like, yeah, okay, that's quite bad. Yeah, you would lose everyone. But no, it's I like these sort of unsolved mysteries. I think it's healthy to have some things that you don't know and that are always there. But yeah, that's my crazy weird thing that I sort of probably believe in but can't prove, and probably never will be able to prove.
Yeah. Although I'm sure there's tons of people in the physics world trying to prove it. I'm a bit of a nerd for quantum things and for space things. Not that I can claim to have loads of knowledge about it. I'm just curious about it. And my favorite fact I keep coming back to is something like 95% of matter is not visible to the naked eye. It's dark matter. We don't know what it is, but it's there. So, if you extrapolate that notion of like radio waves and gamma rays and UV light and all that stuff we can't see, but it is there, it's entirely possible there's whole civilizations that don't live on carbon, they live on gamma rays, but we can never see them.
Yeah.
And that might be the definition of a ghost. It's like, it's a bit kooky, and I actually don't like thinking about ghosts because it creep me out, but like, scientifically, you go, loads of things are invisible but sometimes show up under certain circumstances. Maybe there is some basis for it. Who knows? Maybe it's unprovable, but it's interesting.
There's a lovely book, actually, looking back at it the other day, I don't know whether you can see this. It's Carlo Rovelli,
I love
The Order
him.
of Time. Yeah, it's a lovely book.
I've not read that one, but he got me into this stuff maybe more than anyone. Well, him and Stephen Hawking. I read some stuff from Stephen Hawking. The Grand Designer, I think, is one of his books, and I was like, okay, this is really fucking wicked. Cool. What's a quote or lyric that sums up how you feel about your life so far?
I wish I was cool enough to know lots of I don't know, Bruce Springsteen lyrics or something, and I can come up with something really fun there. But the one that in honesty always comes to the top of my mind is one that I sort of, I don't know why it captured me when I first heard it, and I'm a fan of the person who came up with the quote. But it's, you know, the illiterates of the 21st will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn, from Alvin Toffler. And although it's kind of factually slightly wrong, as though you can't really ever unlearn anything, it's like once you have knowledge, you can't just magically make it disappear.
Yes.
I think it is true, and it kind of speaks again to that remaining ever curious, which I think in our industry, regardless of what job you have, is critical if you want to remain relevant, if you want to create great work that's going to help build brands and change the way that people think about things, or help make you more successful or your company more successful. And I think that it's a big driving force for why I started my company. I think the way that education is delivered is deeply flawed in most cases, particularly in the traditional education system, and particularly with online learning. I just don't think it's delivered in a creative, interesting way. And so I've spent now a big portion of my life building a platform to help change that. And it's,
Yes.
yeah, I wish it was grow faster, but it's sort of, we've got lots of fans. I'm always insanely grateful of that. My sort of comfort with that as well is we obviously we have a membership offering, and people tend to renew and send us nice emails saying how they've enjoyed things, and that's great. I think education shouldn't be something that should be a chore. It should be something that's enjoyable. It should be something that you look forward to.
Yeah.
It's a dreamy thing, but imagine if it could be as enjoyable as sort of watching your favorite TV show or playing your favorite game. I think the world would be a very different place.
Yeah. I mean,
I
what I
think
like
that's why
about
most
42 courses is just the user experience is all about making you feel comfortable and at ease. Like the copywriting is great, hello Einstein, or, there's like all these different details where you don't feel like you're going to be lectured to. You're already feeling smarter just by, it's like you're feeling embraced into a learning experience rather than just, right, here's now 17,000 master classes that you'll never have time to complete. It's like that.
yeah, thanks, Rob. Means a
No
lot.
worries. What do most people misunderstand about your job?
I think the other thing which is probably a bit different is I don't really know many other people who make the platform and the courses. And I think that's a bit weird, because if you say like, oh, I'm a teacher, it's kind of easier. If you say I'm working in advertising, I'm a strategist, whatever, it's easier. I think my job is always half one leg in one side of it, which is making courses and partnering with wonderful people. And the other side of it is trying to work on the platform and build that out.
Yeah.
So I think that's sometimes a little bit harder to understand for people, but I think it's critical. If you want to create the best content, it needs to fit a delivery system that's going to make it absolutely fantastic. And I think that's why I've done it. I didn't want to build an LMS when I started this. I just still can't find anything that, as you say, comes with the passion and the joy of trying to use a bit of creativity to make things really stand out and be different and make them enjoyable. I was interested though what your answer would have been to the last one, the lyric or quote.
I'll probably go with what's his name? The existentialist. What's his name? The French dude, existentialist. Not Simone de Beauvoir. Jean-Paul Sartre. He talked about how freedom is what you do with what is given to you. And I think that's probably one of the most foundational one-liners I always go back to, because it taught me to be at ease with my job as a strategist, where you work with what you're given. And sometimes you may know the answer is fix the product, but your brief is to fix the comms. So you got to learn to let go. You can tell people, like I've worked on projects where we go, you are aware that this particular type of product isn't how you get to this audience because they prefer this particular type of package. And they go, yes, we are aware, but that's the product we have. So go, okay, great. We got to move on, right? And so being able to work with what's given to you, I think, is very helpful, especially because for various reasons, which we don't need to get into, but like I grew up with a lot of anger about the world. And I started realizing that I was angry at all the things that either had happened or that I couldn't control. And it's just not healthy, right? It literally creates physical illness to be angry all the time, right? Be stressed all the time, to be on overdrive all the time. So it helped. Ideas like these help me calm down, and they also help me just take a slightly healthier view on life, not just my job, right? I'm a father now, and increasingly there are things that I just cannot control about my daughter, but that's how it works, right? What I can do is shape the environment. It's funny, like you're talking about 42 courses, and one of the popular courses is on behavioral science. One of the best tricks that I've see working time and time again is giving toddlers the illusion of choice. Do you want to have a shower before or after brushing your teeth? Is a much more effective way of getting them to do the right thing than going, do you want to have a shower? Because if you ask, do you want to have a shower? They'll go, no. But if you give them the choice, they'll go, okay, I still have agency. And when you're 2, you have so little control you don't have control over anything. So some sense of control is helpful for you to feel like, okay, I feel good about this decision. So I can't force my daughter to do things, but I can be intelligent about choice design. Let's put it that way. And if you think I'm being very nerdy about parenthood, trust your instincts, because I am.
I've just joined your club. We've got a little 5-month-old little baby boy now.
Oh, congratulations.
So, you'll need to tell me all of your parenting tips after this.
Well, this isn't really about me, but I will send you a link after this, because I actually contribute now I helped start, and now I contribute once a month to a project called Project Papapalooza, which I started with a CSO who got in touch early this year. I called Adrian, who's brilliant Spanish guy in Madrid. We never met, we just bonded over parenting. We started writing together. And so part of it is precisely to help people navigate modern dadhood, with modern being one of the key qualifiers here. Because there's many ways of being a dad, but there's a lot of bad ways of being a dad. What do you like? What would you like to be remembered for, Chris?
I think helping others is probably the driving factor for me. I don't know, when I think about it, I wonder whether, I mean, that's the thing that probably first comes to mind, or whether it's sort of something else. There's probably missing enjoyment factor in there somewhere, but I don't know. I mean, it's so, I never quite understood why until I think we made a course on happiness with an amazing guy called Mike Viking, who's just got a new book out, by the way, called The Art of Danish Living, if you want to have a... Is
his last name Viking?
Yeah, he's got a really cool name, Mike Viking, and his dad's name is even better. His dad's name is Bear Viking, which is so badass. Like, that
is badass, man. And is he Danish?
Yeah, he's Danish, and he's also insanely handsome. I mean, wow.
Life isn't fair for some of us, you know?
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know what they put in the water in Denmark, but they all seem to be incredibly attractive over there. Yeah. It's very unfair. So I've only been there a couple of times. I almost can't bear to go back. I feel very inadequate. But when we were making this course with Mike, he said something which I thought was very interesting. He said that you actually get more joy out of helping others than when people help you.
Yes.
And when you think about it, it's kind of quite true. Like if someone buys you a coffee at a coffee shop, I know your card doesn't work or something, and a stranger buys you the coffee, you'll be pretty happy about it. You'll be like, that was so nice of that person. But if you've ever bought someone a coffee and you can see the look of joy in their face, like, it actually makes you even more happy, and that joy lasts even a little bit longer.
Yes.
And he was telling me that they did these sort of studies and tests, and they found that if you wanted to, even the most selfish people in the world, the way that they could become happier was actually to give more to others, which I thought is so lovely. Even people who are selfish, they'll get actually even more joy out of helping others. Yeah. But I thought that was interesting. But I love that. I love seeing other people being uplifted and doing great things, and maybe breaking down some barriers that are holding them back in lives. And I think education has the power to do that, which is I'm so passionate about it, and why we do all the things that we do. So yeah, I think that would be my thing for being remembered for.
If only more people thought that way, man. The world would be much better, that's for sure. But yeah, there is something quite interesting about that, and it's interesting because like you the point about the intensity of feeling and how long it lasts is quite an interesting nuance to that, right? Because for someone buying you a coffee, you feel good in the moment, maybe you forget about it, whatever. Maybe for a while you think you feel good about humanity, but you seeing yourself as a good person for having helped others, it feels like it has a compounding effect that is much more powerful.
Absolutely.
Because then you need to not contradict that view of yourself. So if you've donated once to charity, I wonder if there are studies proving that you're more likely to donate again, because now you see yourself as someone who donates to charity.
100%, you're right. Yeah, it's not a question. I think that's just true.
Yeah.
And I think when we all help people in different ways, like, it doesn't need to be that you're helping them by teaching them something. It could be something totally different. But yeah, I mean, we're all so connected. I mean, we've never met in real life. We share so many mutual friends.
Yes.
And here we are having a conversation now. The world's a very small place. I think the more we help each other and the more we lift each other up, the better everything will be.
Completely agree. I was speaking to someone on LinkedIn this morning, and we were talking about just how when you run your own business, like karma can be good business, because there is something, going back to there are certain things in the universe you can't prove but maybe believe in, but like there is something about if you pay things forward and you help people, they're just much more likely to remember you when they, like, I have an example of someone who used to be an account executive of mine, and we had a great relationship back then, and then we move on to our separate lives. And now he's like working at a startup as a head of brand marketing. But like the relationship that we formed like 7 years ago, when we reconnected, we just bonded because that was already there. So in our industry specifically, it's just the right thing to do. But B, people move around, and you never know how often they're going to move around to interesting places, and then you get to do stuff together, or how much they're going to leapfrog you. Like I know a designer who was a junior when I started, and his brother was a design director. Fast forward 10 years, they are now both working independently, but the junior guy is now basically running a collective that employs, amongst others, his brother. So the junior is now in charge of basically being the MD of a collective which employs his brother, who's just mostly worried about the craft. And when I learned that, I was like, God, you just should give people the benefit of the doubt, especially when they're starting out, because you never know what's going to happen, right? And so it's just, the more you let people progress in those ways, the better. And selfishly, it can kick back to you in interesting ways by having helped someone before.
100%. I was reading something interesting that may be helpful. It was a study done on sort of LinkedIn. They were asked. It was looking at who would give you help,
yes,
if you asked for it, and the rough overview was that if you ask, it was like you were more likely to get sort of decent help, like really thought through help, from people that were contacts that you hadn't chatted to for years, than people that you interact with day to day. It's like the people that you interact with day to day, maybe just like, oh, whatever, I'll get back to it. But the people who you haven't chatted to in years would more often not reply and go like, oh, brilliant, like, yeah, how can we do this? Like, I thought this was kind of interesting. So if you ever want advice or you're looking for a point of view, actually going back to people who you haven't chatted to for a few years can be more helpful than people who you chat with every day. And I think most of us don't think that. We think, oh God, I haven't spoken to that person for ages, so I feel very bad about that, so I won't contact them. Yes. And actually the opposite seems to be true. Like when you do interact, because you haven't interacted, as long as you kind of got along, even roughly, then they're like, okay, yeah, great. Like that's, it's a good opportunity to reconnect, and it's a comfortable reconnect as well, because you kind of, know each other, you've had a shared experience.
Yeah, that's a very interesting piece of research. I mean, instinctively it makes sense. I hadn't seen that research myself, but it's very interesting that someone's been able to demonstrate that. It's almost like the relationship is less saturated. There's less intensity, but there's a greater curiosity gap. Like, oh, what have you been doing the last 10 years?
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened with this designer guy. It's like, I hadn't spoken to him in 10 years. And it's like, yo, can we talk? And then we were just so happy to reconnect. So yeah, that's it's encouraging as well, right? Because when you run your own company, like I'm literally in the process of trying to daily reassure myself that it's okay to get in touch with people and having somewhat of an agenda, which sometimes might be I'm doing some research on your vertical, I'd like to ask you some questions, or I am now working for myself, here's what I do if you ever need help, whatever. Or sometimes it's just catching up. But like the act of proactively going, can we talk? And I'm going to come with a specific set of things that I'd like to get out of that conversation. It feels strange because you feel like a salesperson, but it doesn't have to be strange. So yeah, I think this level of reassurance of reaching out to people is something that we all probably struggle with more than we care to admit. You know, it's like you say, you don't want to just go 10 years without contact and one day you remember me because you need a favor. Like sometimes people are just happy to help.
And we know now that it makes them feel even better about themselves too.
So there you go. You can always go, look, the reason I'm reaching out is because of science.
Yeah. I want you to feel good about yourself. So help me.
Exactly. Who in your industry deserves more attention?
I mean, in the world of education, probably teachers. They do a lot of good under incredibly difficult situations. In the world of ad land, I don't know. I mean, you could say creatives because they're often the most underpaid and underthanked. I mean, I was actually chatting to this the other day with a friend of mine, and we were saying we think it's actually the suits who have the worst job, the hardest job.
I agree with that.
Yeah, you got to try and make a client happy and make the agency happy, and you're the person in between. So inevitably, you're always disappointing someone. But I think the real answer I would give probably for that are like the assistants, the people who are the PAs to lots of the important people, the people who are on reception desks, those kind of people. That I found in every agency I ever worked for, probably the most helpful thing was actually getting to know those people because they know when stuff's going to happen way before anyone else does because they have to.
Yes.
They're going to have to field questions. They're going to have to deal with things. So I think having a good relationship with those kind of people in an agency is critical. It also enables you to often open doors that previously wouldn't been able to. It makes it maybe a little bit easier to get time with a senior person or know an event that's going to be happening sooner. And I think I've never heard a Lions talk or a TED talk talking about assistants and the power of them. Like, I don't read any articles about it. It's just totally like, yeah, whatever. But I think that they actually hold a huge amount of sway and power. And also they're obviously people who spend a huge amount of time chatting with these people who are often, if you're talking about like a big network agency, like a lot of these people are quite shielded, understandably, because their time's precious. But it means they end up spending a huge amount of time chatting to their assistant and people who work around them. And so inevitably they can be influenced by those people.
So
I
what
think
you're
there will
saying
be
is you should
people.
interview an executive assistant at some point, which I probably will.
100%. My word, yeah. I mean, that'd be incredible. I think there's a whole show in that.
Yeah.
That would be, and it would be insane. I don't know how. Yeah, they're probably the good ones probably don't say that much about their bosses, but it'd be interesting if there was a way to get heartfelt conversations from those people about.
Yeah.
Maybe even if it's done anonymously about the decisions that they see being made. And
I even have a bad
process.
pun for the name of that show. If it's about executive assistants, you just call it the EA Sport.
Love it.
Chris, I know we have 3 minutes left. What's one thing you wish I'd asked you?
Probably let's make a course together.
Okay. We can definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
What's one question you have for me?
What's the most valuable lesson you've learned in life so far? I thought of this because you've just had a kid as well, and I think it makes you think about these bigger things. What's the kind of thing? I guess another way to phrase that could be, what's the one gift that you wish that you could give your daughter as she grows older?
I would say probably, I think this applies probably to work and life, but learn how to do most things in a good enough way before passing them on, right? So you don't have to be the best at everything. It's impossible. But at work, know well enough what writing an idea looks like, even if you're not the creative. Know well enough what a status document might look like, even if you're not an account person. Know well enough what sorts of things need to go into a scope for an experiential thing, even if you're not the producer. right? You're the strategist. None of those things are your job, but you will become much more useful if you know well enough a bit about all of those things. I think it's a valuable lesson for my daughter because it encourages you to just try things without the pressure of needing to be great at them. You're just doing it because you're curious about it. And also, I think it is an interesting proxy for being an involved dad. The only thing I can't do is breastfeed. Everything else I can do and have done and do around the house, right? I was the first person to change diapers because my partner had a C-section. She couldn't really move anything after. So it wasn't a choice, but I'm so glad I did it because I can't really say I'm the best diaper changer in the world, although I think I'm pretty good. I'm so glad that I'm such a hands-on dad. And I just want Emma, my daughter, to hopefully A, appreciate that, and B, look for that trait when in the future she is looking for a partner, whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. But like as a characteristic, I think that's a useful thing to have. You know, know well enough how to do most things, even if they're not your thing.
And well done on the nappy changing. I quite like it. I find it quite calming. I have a little routine going.
Yeah. Well, I once described it as like an unsung bonding experience because if you think about it, and I'm being very strategist about it, maybe we'll finish on that point, a diaper analogy, but if you don't think it as nappy changing, if you think it as I am making my child comfortable again, everything changes, right?
100%.
They are at their most vulnerable when you're changing a nappy. So make it fun, make it calming, and remind them that you're doing this because you want them to be comfortable again. That's how I've thought about it since basically my kid was born, and I have zero problems being, surrounded by poop because if I think it's bad for me, it's worse for her. So I'm helping, So let's finish on that. A poop sentence. Chris, thank you very much for this. Who should I speak with next? If you have anyone that comes to mind.
I had three, and I'm happy to introduce you to all of them. I thought the one chap I met, this year, who I've known for a long time, but not ever managed to get to spend some time with, apart from recently, was Alex, the guy who's the editor of Contagious, who I think you actually already know. Fascinating guy. The other chap who I've got to know well this year is Dan Ariely. We're making a course with him at the moment. He's fantastic. Such a lovely chap. Incredible behavioural scientist. But I think he actually came over and spent a bit of time with some friends at Ogilvy, just shadowing an agency. So there's probably some interesting things you could ask him there. But also, I think what makes Dan stand out is he's such an incredible storyteller. He's a brilliant behavioural scientist, but he's an incredible storyteller and fantastically generous, kind person. And then the third one was someone who you definitely wouldn't know, I don't think, but he's well known in South Africa when I was there, and he's also just such a fun, exciting, interesting chap. It's a guy called Richard Mulholland. He's got a Scottish surname. He's originally from Scotland, but he lived in South Africa for most of the time. He's just moved to Jersey or Guernsey, one of those kind of weird islands. But he's an incredibly interesting entrepreneur and speaker who's done a bunch of TED Talks and spends most of his time traveling around the world delivering keynote talks for big companies. He started a company teaching TED speakers how to speak at TED. And just a really interesting, very energetic, very curious mind. I think you'd get along like a house on fire.
I would love an introduction to all of them if you're offering.
I'll make it happen. It'd be an honor. Thanks.
Chris, thank you for joining Salmon Theory Talks. I imagine what people can know more about you is just go to 42courses.com. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Great.
Nailed it.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
If whoever's watching this or listening, if you're still here, thank you as well.
Yeah, thank you. And well done. I really enjoyed it. I'm very happy. So thank you. I've learned a lot.
Thank you.
From you as well, which I'm really happy about. And it's been so fantastic to chat with you, Rob. You're a legend. I hope this goes from strength to strength, and very excited to continue reading your amazing insights in your newsletter too. So thank you for being you.
Well, if nothing else, I'll learn from folks so that I'm less interested in the numbers, although if the numbers come in, great. But if not, this is just rewarding in and of itself. Chris, I'm going to let you go. Thank you. I'm definitely signing up to Riverside FM because